Hi everyone, my name's Aleta and this is Buddhism for Beginners. All my technology has just been going very strange and my clock just even stopped on my phone. I think it's 7 p.m, so I think I'm starting. So this is the 5th class of Buddhism for Beginners, and this is the final class in this series of Buddhism for. Last week we talked about karma, and tonight we're going to be having a brief introduction to very important advanced teachings of the Buddha on death and bodhicitta and the wisdom of emptiness. So it's just a brief introduction, and I hope that it may be of benefit and that you may have the opportunity to get more advanced teachings on these topics. So we'll start with an arrival meditation just to help us to transition from what may have been a busy, stress-filled day. Maybe our mind is a bit busy at the moment as well. Maybe we're holding on to some stress from our busy day. So we just give our body and our mind an opportunity to arrive in the present moment, an opportunity to settle a little and to calm down maybe. So we just get into a comfortable position, as comfortable as you can be wherever you are in this present moment. And see if you can just put aside any thoughts of what came before today, anything that may have been weighing on your mind, any worries, any plans for the future, any stresses that you're holding on to. We can just place these things aside just for this next hour and a half, and we can always pick them up again at the end of the class if we wish. But just for this class, we'll see if we can be a person in this moment with no history and no future. So just taking a couple of deep breaths all the way into the belly if you can. And having a sense of releasing any stress on the out breath. And then just letting the breath flow into its natural rhythm. And just noticing the points of contact of our body with the chair or the floor or the cushion holding it. Feeling the stability, the solidity, and the security of that surface holding us. And just noticing how the body is in this moment. Noticing if there are any areas of tightness or discomfort. And if there are, imagine that you can breathe into those areas. As you breathe into those areas, imagine suffusing the area with the loving kindness of your breath, taking care of yourself. And as you imagine breathing out from that area, imagine letting go of any of the tightness, the tension, or the discomfort with each out breath. Just allowing the body to relax at its own pace. Now, just for a moment, thinking of our motivation for being here tonight. We've put some effort into coming to this class to hear a bit about the teachings of the Buddha. Just thinking what our motivation is for doing that. Seeing if we can set a positive motivation for being here. And then we could expand that positive motivation out so that we may benefit ourselves to help us to have a more meaningful, happy life, and that may help all those around us to have a more meaningful, happy life as well. That we all may develop wisdom and compassion, and that could spread out to the entire world, to every being in the world. And this could result in the world being a more peaceful, kind, compassionate place. And now just gently turning our attention to the breath, wherever we notice it the most in this moment. It might be at the nostrils or on the upper lip. It might be the rise and fall of the chest, or the rise and fall of the belly. Or it might be the complete wave-like flow of the breath. Wherever you notice the breath the most in this moment, just gently placing your attention there and just observing each in and each out breath. Having a sense of curiosity about the breath, noticing how this breath is in this moment. And you might notice that natural relaxation that occurs with each out breath. The muscles of the chest and the diaphragm relax, allowing the breath to flow out. We can use each out breath to relax deeper into the meditation. releasing any remaining tension or discomfort, any distractions, emotions that arise, any thoughts that arise. We can just let go with each out breath. When you notice that the mind has wandered, that you've distracted, that's great. It means you're being mindful. When you notice that the mind has wandered away, just gently, kindly bring the attention back to the breath. Just this moment, just this breath. Maybe you can have a sense of gratitude for this breath, which sustains us, nourishes us. And now just noticing the state of the body in this moment without judgment, just noticing how it is, and noticing the state of the mind in this moment. There's no right or wrong, it's just your experience. Becoming aware of the places of contact of our body with that solid, secure surface holding it. Noticing the touch of our clothes on our skin and the air on our skin. Noticing the noises outside the room. And the noises inside the room. And when you're ready, feeling joyful and relaxed, gently open the eyes and have a stretch. Hi, Crystal and Vince. It's nice to have you here again. I hope you are well and meeting any of the challenges of COVID. Some of our restrictions are easing now, so that's good. And we just keep trying to live in the present moment, no matter what happens. If there were any questions arising about karma that we discussed last week, you're welcome to put any questions up there. Hi, John. It's nice to have you back again as well. That was a good meditation. Was that Crystal or Vince? If it was a good, there's actually no good or bad meditation. It's all in the mind. But if your view was that it was a good meditation, then that's your mind doing that. So that's good, Crystal. Good on you, Crystal. So tonight we're going to talk about death, bodhicitta, and the wisdom of emptiness. Just a very brief introduction to these extremely important teachings of the Buddha. Um, and I hope maybe it's just planting a seed there that you reflect more about these topics, and you may go on to learn about these teachings from more advanced teachers. So we start with death and dying. Hi, Ashok. This is your first session. It's always interesting karma when someone starts their first class on the last class of the course. Don't run away though, Ashok. This is your karma, so it's good. When I originally started my delving into Buddhism at the Vajrayana Institute, how long ago? 20 years ago, was it? Long time. My first class was on death and dying as well. And I know that John, who's here tonight, also started on the last class of a course out at the Vajrayana Institute. So it's just interesting karma. So, death and dying, tonight we're going to have the aim of demystifying the process of what actually happens when we die. If we know a bit about that, then we can prepare for our own death, and we don't have to be fearful of it. They say that two things are certain in life: death and taxes. And many people prepare for their taxes, but maybe not so many prepare for their death. So we're going to become a little bit more familiar with death and dying tonight, I hope. And remember, there's no hard, conclusive evidence of what happens after death, but it is useful to have a working hypothesis, which we talked about when we were talking about rebirth. If you accept as a hypothesis that rebirth exists, then that can help us to lead a more meaningful life now, a happier life now. And we can use that hypothesis to aspire to be the best version of ourselves that we can be, and maybe striving to continually improve ourself, our mind and our heart in wisdom and compassion. So we all know intellectually that we're going to die, but we tend to not think about it a lot, I think. That's why we seem shocked when we find out that a loved one has a terminal illness, or a friend has passed away suddenly, or we find out that we may have a terminal illness. It's a real shock. And really, it shouldn't be, because we all know that we're going to die. It's just a part of this life. And, I really think it's helpful to think about that and accept it instead of denying it, pretending it's not going to happen, or it's not going to happen now. It's going to happen when I'm old and I'm ready to die. Yeah, no, doesn't often happen that way, I think. So we can tend to maybe waste our life if we're not always keeping in mind that we're going to die at some stage, at any stage. If we know that we can die at any stage, then we can focus more on what we want to achieve in this life, or to do what's important to us, rather than just distracting ourselves and thinking that we'll get to those important things that we want to do at a later stage. That later stage may never come. So reflecting upon death is not meant to be a morbid thing. It's not meant to make you more fearful. It's meant to make you value your life now and to think about what you really want to do with your life. If that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense to me. And if we also think about death more, become more familiar with it, then we can have a more peaceful, content mind in this moment as well as at the moment of death. If we work on our mind now to have a more peaceful and calm mind, then since death can happen at any time, at that moment of death, we will continue to have that peaceful and calm mind. If we practice Dharma now, practice what we learn in Buddhism to help us to have a more calm, wise mind, to develop our compassion and wisdom, then we are leading a meaningful life in this moment. And if we become familiar with the actual death process, which we're going to talk about later, this is like having a roadmap to dying. So if we know what's going to happen, if we know the signs and the stages of death, then we're not going to be as fearful when death comes. So we can prepare for our death by practicing Dharma, as I said, which is all about emphasising all this, the Buddha's teachings, using them, applying them in our daily life as tools to help us in all our challenges, in all our different emotional states. We can use the tools and views of Buddhism to transform our mind now. And we can give up things like ignorance and anger, selfishness, clinging to attachment, jealousy, pride, and we can purify our negative actions. We talked about that last week. We can do all this now to transform our mind now. So if we reflect upon death now as much as we can, we won't be distracted. We won't waste this amazing opportunity of a human life, a precious human life that we have now. So the Buddha's medicine for this is the 9-point death meditation. The 9 points in this meditation are divided into 3 subgroups. Each subgroup has 3 points and then a conclusion. So the 3 subgroups are that death is certain, the time of death is uncertain, and at death only Dharma can help us. So the first group, death is certain. These are the 3 points in that group. No one can stop death. Everyone born will have to die. We can't run away from death. We can't escape. There's nowhere to escape to. Death is certain. So the second point, we can't add to our lifespan. As each moment of life passes, we come closer to our death, even when we're asleep or distracted. That clock of life is always ticking away. The third point, you will die even if you're not ready or practicing Dharma. We will be in the middle of something when we die. So, some people are in the middle of a jigsaw puzzle when they die. People can be in the middle of studying a course, doing a degree or something at uni. They're in the middle of it and they die. You can be in the middle of eating your dinner and die. It can happen at any moment. So the conclusion is that I must follow the path and practice Dharma now. Death is certain, so I must practice Dharma. And then the second group, time of death is uncertain. Our lifespan is not fixed. Age is no guarantee, and health is no guarantee. So, again, intellectually, we know this, but it's helpful to reflect upon it, become more familiar with it. We know that people die young, people die as children, teenagers, early adulthood. And health is no guarantee. You can be very fit and strong and healthy and have an accident and die today. Again, we know intellectually, but let's reflect upon it and really know it in our heart to help us to have a more meaningful life. Sorry, I've just lost my place in my notes. That's just my karma. There's more chance of dying than living. The things that kill us are many. The things that keep us alive are few. Even things that sustain life can kill us. So we can have an allergic reaction to food. Food normally sustains life, but it could kill us if we're allergic to something that we eat, or if we eat contaminated food. Water sustains us, but if we drink contaminated water, we can get disease and die. So the third point, the human body is fragile. We think that we are fit and strong, but we can get one microscopic virus, COVID-19 virus maybe, and that tiny little virus can kill us. That's how fragile the body is. If one tiny piece of metal goes in the wrong place in the body, if we get a tiny piece of metal lodged in the brain or the heart, we could die instantly. One tiny blood clot in the brain or the heart could kill us. The skin gets cut so easily, bones get broken so easily. Really, the body is not that strong when you think about it. Organs are fragile. If you get an injury, to an organ, you can die. So it's very easy to die. So we resolve to practice Dharma from this moment on. That's the conclusion from those 3 points, that time of death is uncertain. So we must practice now. We don't know when we're going to die. We don't know if we're going to die tomorrow or in the next moment. So really make the use of our life now. Make it meaningful, practice Dharma. So then the third group, at death, only Dharma can help us. So at the time of our death, when we're dying, wealth obviously can't help us. Naked and empty-handed, we leave this life. So a millionaire and a homeless person dies in the same way or a similar way. Money doesn't help. Friends can't help. They can help us right up until the moment of death, maybe, but when it's time for us to die, we're on our own. We experience death by ourselves. The body can't help us at the time of death. The body that we've cared for so well, maybe all of our life, turns against us when it's time to die. The body breaks down. So the conclusion from this is to follow only Dharma, since nothing else can help us when we die. And when you think about it, even if we're trying to do our best practicing Dharma, there's still a lot of time in our days that are spent on things like sleeping or working or housework, whatever. So this is all time that maybe we're not practicing Dharma. But we can put all of those activities towards practicing Dharma if we have the right motivation and we're mindful and we have the right intention. Any questions about that? I think we all do know that we're going to die, and we're just familiarising. And this can help us to be not so fearful and to lead the sort of life that we want to lead now. So what is death? The process of dying involves progressive loss of physical, sensory, and mental functions. As nervous activity closes down from the periphery to deep within the nervous system. In the West, in medicine, science, there's an arbitrary line which is drawn for legal death. And this is along a spectrum of brain death, when the heart stops, or when the circulatory or nervous system stop. That can take up to 3 days for those processes to actually come to a stop. So in Buddhism, death is when the mind and body separate. So that's quite clear and simple. The mind and body separate, that's death. Meditation masters and enlightened beings have documented the death process for us through their own experience and observation. So this is our roadmap to help us to know what's happening as we're dying. Then with the roadmap, we don't have to get lost. We can navigate our way through dying with confidence. Sounds good. So these 8 stages in the death process. The first is the dissolution of the earth element of the body. So this involves deterioration of the hard parts of the body. Our limbs become weak and thin. Our vision becomes blurred. There are sensations of feeling like you're falling or being buried under a weight, like being buried under earth. This is the sort of feeling that you can have at this first stage of death. The body colour fades. We become pale. The colour drains out of us. And there's an inner vision in our mind, like a mirage. So when you see a mirage of water on the road or in the desert, that's the inner vision that occurs at this first stage of death. Then the second stage is dissolution of the water element of the body. So here there's a decrease in the liquids in the body. Our mouth becomes dry, sweating ceases, and there's a loss of feelings. Strong physical and mental feelings cease, so they're diminishing. Hearing weakens. The ringing sound in our ears stops, and the inner vision is like a smoke-filled room. The third stage of death is the dissolution of the fire element of the body. So we feel coldness in the body at this point. There's a loss of discrimination. We can't recognise faces or remember names. Our hands and feet are extremely cold. Digestion ceases. The inhalation becomes weak and the exhalation becomes long. The sense of smell ceases, and the inner vision in the mind is of sparks or fireflies. The fourth stage of dying is the dissolution of the wind element of the body. So here the breathing stops, the wind. Breathing stops, we have loss of volition, so we can't move our limbs. We lose our sense of touch and taste. Our tongue contracts and turns blue. The vision for this stage is of a flame, a single flame. Then we have loss of consciousness in this stage. And although we stop breathing, the death process isn't yet complete, and in some cases can still be reversed. So you hear of people having near-death experiences and coming back at this stage. And then if we don't come back, if the dying process continues, our last thoughts cease at this stage. And our consciousness becomes more and more subtle over the final 4 stages. So the 5th stage is complete cessation of movement, breath, heartbeat, and memory. And to a Westerner, it may seem that death has occurred at this point. But the Buddhist tradition says that there is still a consciousness in the body at this point, even though there's no movement, no breath, no heartbeat. The consciousness can still be there. It hasn't left the body at this stage. And the vision here is white. White vision, like a clear, empty sky filled with the light of a full moon, they say. The sixth stage is a red vision, like clear, empty sky filled with the rays of a red sunset. The seventh stage is black vision of total darkness, empty of any form, and this ends in a momentary complete loss of consciousness. Then the eighth stage is the clear light of death. This is the most subtle consciousness, and the vision is like a clear sky at dawn. This is the final vision of death, and this can last up to 3 days. And then death is complete when the mind leaves the body. When the mind leaves the body, the outer sign is a red drop that exits through the nose or the mouth, and a white drop that comes from the lower opening. So that's death. Then the 8 visions occur in reverse, and you wake up as an intermediate state, or a bardo being, we call it. And this can last up to 49 days. So in this bardo realm, our appearance takes the form of our next rebirth. Propelled by karmic imprints that are left on our mind stream by our actions and state of mind at death, we are drawn to the next rebirth like iron fillings to a magnet. So that's the end of the bardo stage. We see our future parents in intercourse. The desire for the opposite sex to us attracts us, and anger for the same sex as us causes the intermediate state, death. And the mind then enters the womb and joins with the fertilized egg at conception. The reverse of the death process then occurs as we experience all those similar visions during conception. Simple. So now we're ready. There is a very, very good book about this that I would like to recommend at this stage, because I don't know whether we're all just going to get it like that. A book called How to Enjoy Death, which I think is a great name. And that's written by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's the spiritual director of FPMT, who's the organisation that runs all these centres, including the Vajrayana Institute. And you can get that book in hard copy. Amazon has it, or fpmt.org. You can also get it as an ebook on fpmt.org. And it's a really comprehensive book about the dying process, how you can help people when they're dying, how you can help people after they've died. It's a wonderful book. So if there's any questions at any stage, feel free to put them up there and I'll do my best with them. Otherwise, we'll move on to what to do with a dead Buddhist. And Crystal and Vince might remember talking about this from previous courses. If someone has died and they're Buddhist, this is what you can do to help them along to their next good rebirth if you do all these things. Um, so you can do this to someone who's not a Buddhist, just as long as it's not going to offend anyone. Yes, Vince says pull their hair. That is one of the things that we can do to help a dead Buddhist. This is also all in the notes that come with this course. So, Ashok, if you would like to have a copy of the book that comes with this course called Foundation Course, I'll put my email address up at the end of the class. And if you send me an email, I can send you a soft copy version of that. And it goes through all these things. Is there a reason why Bardo is 49 days? A reason? I don't know. If there is a reason, I don't know what it is. I'm sorry. That's Ashok, isn't it? Blabbering me is your, what do you call it? A meme, is it? No, I don't know the reason. But I can ask one of the teachers at Vajrayana Institute, and if you come back next week, hopefully I'll have an answer for you. You're going to ask about a book. Yeah, that's a great book. And it's got it in those notes there as well. Okay, so what to do with a dead Buddhist? I have to keep looking at the time because there's a lot to talk about here, and I'm probably not going to be able to get through it all. So I'll just quickly say some of the things we can do if a Buddhist has died. First of all, we ascertain the situation. We check if they're breathing. If they're still alive, we call an ambulance or we get them medical help, apply CPR, etc. So don't just write them off as dead unless you really, really know. If they have been dead for a while, stop, sit down, and breathe. First thing to do. Identify the feelings coming up in us. Don't succumb to them, just notice them. So don't be overwhelmed by your fear or your grief. If you can, do what you can to just notice and to just be mindful. Then you're going to be of more benefit to this person who has died. Then we talk to the dead person. We explain that they're dead and what we're doing to try and help them. The only reason I feel it's funny is because I've never done this with a dead person. Have I? No, I haven't. I've not had the opportunity since I've been Buddhist to actually go through all these things. But it makes sense to me. When you die, you don't necessarily know that you've died. So for someone to tell you you're dead is actually helpful. Then we leave the body undisturbed for as long as we can. And apparently, once a person is dead, you can legally leave it as long as you like. So I think that's not necessarily true if they're in hospitals. But if someone has died at home or outside a medical facility, you can leave the body as long as you like legally. So then we can say prayers, we can do lots of different Buddhist practices, which are all listed in that book that I was talking about, How to Enjoy Death. We should try to refrain from crying until all of this is over. So we do all these things that we can to help the person who has just died. Then we can cry afterwards when we know that the consciousness has left the body. We can touch the body with holy objects or blessing cords. We can visualize Buddhas or light rays coming from the body. We can say prayers. We leave the body quiet. We be as quiet and calm as we can. And then the out of sign of death, as we said before, is when blood comes from the nose or the body goes cold, including the heart area. That area is cold. The body can begin to smell. Sometimes I think it's just obvious that you get a real sense that this person has been pronounced dead. That you get the feeling that they're not quite gone, and then all of a sudden it just appears obvious to you that they've finally gone. I've had that experience a couple of times with friends and family that have died. There's a point where you really get the feeling they've gone now. Don't know if anyone else has had that experience. So then, at that stage, before moving the body, pull the hair on the crown vigorously so that this encourages the consciousness to leave from the crown, which is much better than leaving from the lower openings. If the person is bald, you can hit hard on the crown, apparently. I wouldn't do it so that you're actually going to make a dent or anything, but just hit them hard, and that encourages the consciousness to move from there. Then you can call an ambulance and relax. At this point, you can cry, you can grieve. You've done a really good job to help this person to have the best possible death and dying process. And this is really auspicious for them gaining a good rebirth. Any questions from that? I hesitate to ask. So, how can we prepare for our own death? We prepare for our own death now, while we're living, while we can, both spiritually and also on a practical level. Don't put it off, because if we get terminally ill, if we're sick in hospital and dying, it's going to be much harder then. You've got so many different things to cope with at that stage, pain and all sorts of suffering. So we want to try and prepare now while we're relatively healthy to do the best we can to prepare for our death. So we can, in our daily life, just be remembering death and impermanence. And they say that it's really a good practice to, when you watch the news and hear of people dying in accidents or famous people dying, whenever you hear about someone dying, try to think to yourself, that's me. One day I will be dying just like this person. So it makes you more familiar with it. Death is just a part of life. It's a universal phenomena, just like birth. And the same process happens in a unique way for each person. So we all have those same 8 stages of death, but it will be our own individual dying process. So we can become familiar with those 8 stages so that we can recognize when it happens. And practicing Buddhists are told that it's very wise to regularly do that dying meditation, going through those 8 stages. to become familiar. This is all about becoming so familiar that we're not freaking out in our mind. We're not so scared and overwhelmed that then that will propel us into a not so good rebirth. If we can be calm and know what's going on, then we're going to get a good rebirth. So while we're healthy and well, we should be doing all those practical things as well, preparing for death, writing a will, sorting out who gets what. We can arrange to donate our assets. That's really good karma to make before you die. Talk to your family and let them know what you want when you're dying. Tell them about how you want them to behave when you're dying. Sort out organ donations. Arrange when machines are turned off in hospitals. Under what circumstances do you want life support machines turned off? You can arrange hospice or home care for your dying now, or think about it. Let your family know what you want. You can arrange to have a trusted friend or a teacher or a nun, if you're lucky, if you've got good karma, to be there around when you're dying to help you spiritually. And you can do things like read that book or go to teachings about death and dying to learn as much as you can about what you can do to get yourself a good rebirth. A funeral is for the living, not for the dead. So have whatever sort of funeral will comfort the family, the loved ones that are left behind. If you're Buddhist, you may want to have some of your ashes put into what they call satsas, which are little clay molds that they make of Buddhas, and you can put some of your ashes into a satsa like that. Or you can have your ashes stored at a stupa, a holy place. Just all things to think about what you want to happen. So, what determines our next rebirth is our throwing karma, which we talked about last week, the state of our mind at death. So, the most important thing when someone is dying is to keep their mind as calm and peaceful as you can. So, we reassure them. We have a nice, peaceful, quiet atmosphere wherever they're dying. We try to refrain from crying, sobbing, hysterics, just trying to reassure that person. Tell them that their family and their loved ones will be okay. And you can do all sorts of things like rejoicing about how positive that person's life was, all the good things that they've done in that life. Get their mind in as good, calm, positive a state as you can. If they're in a hospital, you can talk to hospital staff about not putting in more invasive drips, etc., when dying is obviously close. Because apparently staff will continue to do those invasive sort of procedures, even though it's clear that the person has not got long to live. 8 p.m. If you're Buddhist and someone is dying who is not a Buddhist, do not try to convert them when they're dying. That will only cause confusion for them. Just encourage them in their own religion or their own beliefs. If they're religious, encourage them to pray, try and generate their faith in God or Jesus Christ. Um, if they're not religious, you can play inspiring music, you can read inspiring books. Just, it's all about assuring them that everything's okay. And remember that death is a unique opportunity to become free of cyclic existence forever. So we can actually become enlightened during that dying process if we're at that level, or we can achieve another precious human rebirth. So death can be very positive. Lama Yeshe said, if we die with loving kindness in our mind, we'll never have to worry about getting a bad rebirth. With loving kindness in our mind, there's no way you'll be reborn in a lower realm. So that's making it nice and simple, that you don't have to, if you forget about what all the stages are of the dying process, if you forget prayers or whatever else you had thought you would do when you were dying, it doesn't matter. Just try and have loving kindness in your mind. That's all you need. And I've heard the Dalai Lama say that as well. That's what the Dalai Lama says that he will be aiming for when he dies, is just to have a mind of loving kindness at death. So that's nice. So if there are any questions about death, put them up, and if I don't know the answer, I will ask one of the esteemed teachers at Vajrayana Institute and get back to you next week or email you. And I just encourage you to read more about death, go to teachings on death and dying, just become as familiar as you can and see if you can get your questions answered about it. So no questions coming up at this stage. We will move on to developing bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is a Sanskrit word which means enlightenment mind. So it's the wish to become enlightened, to benefit all sentient beings, not just all people, but all beings that have a mind, including insects and animals and beings in hell realms. We want to become enlightened to save everyone else, to enlighten all of them. This is bodhicitta. The Dalai Lama says, if you must be selfish, be wisely selfish. Wise people serve others sincerely, putting the needs of others above their own needs. And ultimately, you will be happier. Self-cherishing is being neglectful and indifferent to the welfare of others. And this is the door to all our problems and suffering. This is the teachings of the Buddha. We have been acting out of self-cherishing since beginningless time. And where has it got us? The reason for all conflicts and wars in the world, from family arguments to full-scale war, are the result of self-cherishing. Cherishing others is regarding the welfare of others as more important than our own. Whatever we do, we take others into consideration. If we're attentive to the welfare of others, it's impossible to do harm. We naturally refrain from non-virtue. Thus, cherishing others is the door to all happiness. And when we say that cherishing others is regarding welfare of others as more important than our own, it doesn't mean not taking care of ourselves. We take care of ourselves with the intention, the motivation to help others. So we're still looking after ourselves, but we generate that wish to look after myself so that I can help others. Equanimity is the foundation of bodhicitta. Equanimity is having a balanced attitude towards all beings, having an evenness of affection to all beings. The three main obstacles to developing bodhicitta are indifference to strangers, attachment for our friends, and aversion for our enemies. And these are the cause of all conflicts and all suffering. It's easy to have compassion and loving kindness for our friends, but we need to have it for our enemies as well. This is what equanimity is all about, valuing everyone as equals. It's the positive relationship that brings happiness, not the person. It's not the enemy that's the source of our agitation. The real enemy is our hatred and anger. This is what harms us. So it's all about our attitude to people that causes happiness or suffering. So to develop equanimity, we try to diminish our attachment for our friends and just focus on how we can benefit them. We try to find common ground with our enemies so that we don't have hatred towards them. And we try to develop affection for those that we see as strangers. And we can do this by recognizing that they're suffering and remembering their kindness. So we're developing kindness and compassion to friends, enemies, strangers equally. And this is equanimity, which is the foundation of bodhicitta, that wish to become enlightened, to enlighten all of them, to free all of them from their suffering. So I don't know whether I have time for that. I should try. There are 6 steps that eventually result in the attainment of bodhicitta. Each step is a state of mind that depends on the previous step or the previous state of mind. And this is called generating bodhicitta, 6 causes and 1 effect. So this is the particular practice to generate bodhicitta. So I'll just go through all those 6 causes and then the 1 final effect that results from those 6 causes. So the first is recognize that all sentient beings have been our mother. I really like this one. In every life, since beginningless time, we've been circling through all these different lives, different bodies, different realms. In each life, since beginningless time, we have had a mother who cared for us. And sometimes people have problems with this practice because maybe their mother in this life they weren't so close to. Maybe she wasn't the main carer when they were young. but we do have a biological mother who actually gives us life. And then, if that mother is not our main caregiver, we have a mother figure who cares for us and looks after us. If we didn't have a mother figure when we were a baby, we wouldn't survive. So, every life we've had a mother or a mother figure, a carer. So, infinite lives, we've had infinite number of mothers. So, there's no way that I can say that any of you have not been my mother. So, I can see all of you and every being, every person, every animal, I can see all of them as having been my mother, my kind mother, at some stage in one of my lives. This is the first step in generating bodhicitta. So we're recognizing that the people that we have difficulties with, our so-called enemies, have been our mother in one life. So this develops a softness in our heart, even if we're really struggling with this person now, finding it a real challenge to have compassion for them. If we develop this view that they were our mother in one life, this is helping us to generate bodhicitta. So the first step was recognizing that all beings have been our mother. The second step is recalling their kindness. If they've all been our mother, then they have been very kind to us. They've given birth to us, protected us, fed us. Without that, we wouldn't live. And we can also remember the kindness of people who are our enemies now by thinking that without them, we wouldn't develop and grow. We become stronger, we develop character from those challenging people that we see as enemies. So we can recall that kindness, that they're helping us to become a better person. So then the third cause, the wish arises to repay their kindness. So we've recognized that every being has been our mother. We've remembered that they've all been kind, very kind to us. Now we want to repay that kindness. So this makes us feel drawn and connected to every sentient being, which is then a cause for the next step, which is to generate great loving kindness, the wish for all others to be happy. This is like unconditional love for all sentient beings without exception. And then the next stage or the next cause is to generate great compassion. So this is like a natural extension of wishing that they all be happy. Compassion is wishing that they all have an end to their suffering. And then the next cause, the highest intention, comes from wishing to remove all beings' suffering and place them in the highest happiness. After contemplating all their suffering, it becomes unbearable to us that they must undergo these sufferings. So then from these 6 causes, we conclude, we have the effect, I myself must help them all. And what is the best way to do that? To become a Buddha ourselves. That's the only way that we can liberate all sentient beings. We free them from their suffering with our perfect wisdom and compassion. So we develop this bodhicitta mind that thinks, may I attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, which is a really beautiful aspirational practice and practical at the same time, because we apply these practices in our daily life. And we're not Buddhas yet. We haven't developed bodhicitta yet, or maybe you have, but I haven't. But it's there in my mind, these practices and these thoughts and this view. So slowly, slowly, it is helping me, except for when I forget, when I'm being not mindful. But that's okay. Then eventually I become mindful and think about what I've been doing, which is harming myself and harming others. So I want to just say those 6 causes and effectors again. You recognize that every being has been our mother. 2, you recall their kindness. 3, you wish to repay their kindness. 4, you generate great loving kindness for them all. You wish them all to be happy. 5, you generate great compassion for them all, wishing them all to be free of suffering. 6, it's unbearable to think that they're all going to continue suffering. You want them to be in highest happiness. And so you conclude that I must help them myself. What's the best way to do this? And that's the one effect, which is bodhicitta, the wish to become a Buddha, to enlighten all of them as well. So now we have 12 minutes left to cover emptiness and dependent arising. This is another very advanced teaching, which obviously I can't cover in 10 minutes, 12 minutes, especially because I don't have the wisdom at this stage to do it justice. But at the same time, I do know that I have Buddha nature. I have the potential to perfect my mind. So I will realize the wisdom of emptiness, as will all of you. You all have Buddha nature as well. And if you become enlightened before me, I know that you'll be helping me, pulling me along to enlightenment. So it's all good. The wisdom of emptiness. The Buddha says that the root cause of all our suffering is the mistaken grasping at a self which doesn't exist the way that it appears. So the wisdom realizing emptiness is the only way to cut this mistake at its root. Things don't exist independently from their own side. Whatever exists, exists dependent on causes and conditions, parts, and our naming them or labeling them, particularly our mental projections, labeling as good or bad. This is the wisdom of emptiness. So things and people are not as solid as they seem. They're all dependent arising, depending on causes and conditions, and we are all interdependent. Just as a quick example, we think that I am a solid entity. I think there's a solid existent Aleta. But if I look for it, I won't actually be able to find this solid I. or solid Aleta. So I have this feeling that there is Aleta, which is real, self existent. Where is that Aleta that I think is so real? These are the things you can reflect upon to help you to see that things are not as solid and impermanent as you tend to think they are or act as if they are. So, where's this real solid Aleta? I'm so different now from when I was 50, from when I was 30, from when I was 15, from when I was 3. I can, if I think back what I was like at those different sorts of ages, I can see that totally different Aleta at each of those ages. So, where's that solid Aleta? Which one? I can also reflect that different people see a different Aleta. Each of you has a projection of who Aleta is. My kids see a different Aleta to you. They do. My husband sees a different Aleta. My friends, my difficult boss, they all see a very different Aleta who they think is Aleta. Which one's the real one? I feel like there's a real solid Aleta or I. But is that the happy one? Is it the calm one? Is it the angry one? Or the nervous one? Or the scared one? The confident one? Which one's the solid Aleta? If I chop off my hand, am I still Aleta? If I chop off my head, am I still Aleta? If I had a heart transplant, would I still be Aleta? If I had a whole body transplant, would I still be Aleta? What about if I had a mind transplant? Would I still be Aleta? These are all the sorts of things we can reflect upon and meditate upon to see that I can't find that solid entity, that I that I think is so solid and permanent. It doesn't exist in that way. There's no independent, unchanging, solid I existing permanently, independently. I do exist interdependently, but not as solidly as I seem. I am a dependent arising, constantly changing, dependent on causes and conditions, parts, and my naming them, particularly that mental projection where I label as good or bad. So we can think of that in relation to this I that we seem so solid, or we can think about that challenging person in my life that I see as an angry, mean person. That's just my projection. That person probably has someone who thinks that they're a kind, caring person. Someone loves that person. So they're not as solid as they seem to me. It is all interdependent. And all our suffering is because we see things as solid and permanent, but they don't exist this way that they appear to us. Because we think that we are independent, permanent, solid, we grasp at things. For me, for this solid I need to have that to be happy. I need that person, or I need those conditions for this solid I to be happy. This is the cause of all our suffering. And the realizing wisdom of emptiness cuts all our delusions at the root. It's simple. I'm still working on it. I'm a work in progress. Sometimes I think I get little glimmers of, yeah, I get it, I get it. And then it's gone in the next moment because I get angry at someone, or I feel my attachment. I desperately need something for this solid I. But it's just planting that seed and thinking about these things, reflecting upon it, and we will come to gradually realize the wisdom of emptiness if we keep working at our mind. So 4 minutes left. Just in closing, remember that all our happiness and all our suffering, all our problems come from within, from our mind, not from out there. It's all about our mind. We create our own reality. I think it's very important to remember that we all have Buddha nature, that we can perfect our mind, and realize that we will achieve that wisdom of emptiness and bodhicitta if we keep practicing. It's all about practicing and working with our mind to develop our innate wisdom and compassion. Lama Yeshe said, simply knowing or understanding the words of the teachings is not enough. The purpose of the words is that they be put into practice. If we don't practice what we know, we will not experience peace of mind. That's extremely important. That's where the workshop is, as Venerable Rabina Gordon says. It's all about reflecting upon these teachings, putting them into practice, just observing in your daily life, noticing when you really have this attitude that that person is a bad person. You're seeing that person as so solid. And then just remember that everything is a dependent arising. It's all our perception. Think about these things, and we start to slowly get more confidence that we are starting to get glimmers of insights, and we will eventually realize these things, and we will perfect our mind, and we will help every other being to perfect their mind. So if you would like to explore these Buddhist teachings and the Buddha's view in more depth, there is such a wealth of teachings at the moment on the internet due to that tiny little COVID-19 virus. So the COVID-19 virus is not all bad. It causes a great amount of suffering, obviously, in the world at the moment, but it's also giving us the opportunity to have amazing teachings at our fingertips. I'm not talking about my teachings, I'm talking about, if you just look at just Vajrayana Institute, even, they're streaming all of their classes at the moment on YouTube. And so many Buddhist centres are now, other religions. There's so many wonderful things that have been put onto YouTube or onto live streaming to help people because we can't get out there physically to go to classes and things. So this is wonderful, and we should rejoice in that. So just looking at Vajrayana Institute, because that's the only one I know the schedule of, if you wanted to go to more advanced teaching than the introductory level, there is Discovering Buddhism on a Monday night at 7 p.m. with Alan Marsh, who's an excellent teacher. And on the 25th of May, which is that next in a couple of weeks' time, isn't it? He starts a new 4-week module, which is called Presenting the Path. And this is an overview of the entire Tibetan Buddhist path to awakening. So that would be a really great place to start in discovering Buddhism. And also on a Wednesday night, Wai Chong, who is my mentor, who is an excellent teacher as well, at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, he is presenting Experiencing Buddha's Teachings, Meditations on Stages of the Path to Enlightenment. And that's a new module which just started today, I believe, Sue. Is that right? You've just been to that, I think. And that goes for 4 weeks, but then he carries on to a different topic. So have a look at the VI calendar and just try to make the most of this opportunity of being able to go to any of these classes at any time that suits us. It's really astounding that we can do that. So I'm already 2 minutes over. So I just want to say that it's been wonderful connecting with all of you, all my kind mothers. And I hope I see you again at Vajrayana Institute, maybe when we're allowed back there in person. That would be lovely to see you there. And I wish you all well, and I hope that you continue to expand your wisdom and compassion. And remember, if you become enlightened before me, help me along too. And thank you very, very much. It's been a pleasure. Next week, I will be starting another 4-week Buddhism in a Nutshell course, which is a different presentation of introductory Buddhism. But you people who've done this course before, I think it would be great to move on to one of those other ones at VI. But you can come back and say hello whenever you want. That'd be lovely too. So just looking at the comments, Sue says, yes, the 8 worldly concerns. Is that what Wai Chong's teaching now or soon? And just check out the VI calendar. There's so much good stuff there. And Ashok, you mentioned that yours and John's first session was on death. So I believe I had a great start. Thank you, Aleta. This is a very informative session. Thank you so much, Ashok. And yes, I think it's very interesting karma that we start on death. Sue says, so that topic started tonight for Wai Chong, 8 worldly concerns. I thought I saw different on the website. Whatever it's doing, it'll be great. So have a good life and stay safe and make the most of this precious human life. Bye. I'm allowed just one little kiss, right? See ya.